Why didn't we object to the fact that there's no recreation, no facilities for women, no facilities for the disabled, no facilities for the sick? How dare they say that this camp meets basic standards? This is a humanitarian issue. And by the way, this is always referred to as a temporary transfer station. Well, at the same time, they admit that the immigration process for some of the residents of Ashraf may take up to 2 years. Anybody here think 2 years sounds temporary? And yet that's the excuse they give for the low standards. Well, it's only a temporary camp. Nobody's going to have to live in here very long. 2 years is very long. What's wrong with letting 23 former U.S. officials, governors, secretaries, generals, former CIA, former FBI people, we were willing to go over at our own expense, and I want to emphasize that because the other side makes a big deal about the fact that we get paid speakers' fees. All 23 of us were willing to go over, we told Madame Rajavi, at our own expense to look at the camp. Don't thank us. Don't thank us yet. We haven't gone. And the reason we haven't gone is because the Iraqi government said no. Well, where is the UN and the U.S.? What were we going to do? Were we going to be subversive? Were we going to somehow undermine the security of the Iraqi government by going over and looking to see if the camp had basic minimum standards? Ladies and gentlemen, it's a joke. They said we had to be out of there by 12/31, December 31st, and yet nothing was ready by December 31st. And now only 1 out of 7 sections is ready. We should call it, sometimes in politics and government, if you have a plan and the plan's clearly not working, you call it off. We should call this off and let everybody stay at Ashland. And lastly, I want to talk about the U.S. Ambassador Daniel Fried, it's on February 7th. The United States is not the sovereign in Iraq. Iraq is the sovereign. Well, that's the mindset that our government has had from the beginning. Well, that makes no sense. I want to ask you a historical question. Was the United States the sovereign in Kosovo when we used our air power to save over 1 million Muslims from genocide? Of course we weren't the sovereign in Kosovo. Was the United States the sovereign in Benghazi in Libya when President Obama organized the NATO airstrikes that tumbled the Libyan government and saved hundreds of thousands of Benghazi residents from genocide? No, we weren't the sovereign there, but we acted. We showed strength, we showed backbone, we showed courage. We did the right thing. And yes, we may technically not be the sovereign, but the case for the United States standing up and saying no and enforcing a decent, if we're going to move to Camp Liberty, making sure that basic rights are protected at Camp Liberty and no one gets hurt and slaughtered again. The United States has a responsibility above and beyond what it had in Kosovo and Benghazi, because there we acted in the best tradition of the United States of America, trying to protect the freedom and liberty and basic human rights of individuals anywhere in this world. Is what has always made me in my entire life proud to be an American. We acted in that tradition. But here, we have a different level of moral and legal responsibility, because when the residents of Ashraf surrendered their weapons, and General Phillips tells me that they were excellent fighters and people who could have used those weapons to defend themselves big time, when they surrendered their weapons to the United States military, each one of them got a signed contract from the United States saying that we would protect them. I still am a lawyer. I used to be a practicing lawyer, and I was a pretty good one. That contract didn't end when the United States turned over sovereignty in 2009 to the Iraqi military and the Iraqi police. That contract, that promise, legally is in force and morally remains in force. So if we acted in Benghazi, if we acted in Kosovo, we need to act in Ashraf. We need the United States. We need the United States to be what we've always been, the protectors of freedom, democracy, and human dignity and rights all over the world. It's time for the talking to end. It's time for the UN and the U.S. to show some backbone. And I don't want to hear them condemn the slaughter if it happens after it happened. And if we stand by and let it happen again, shame on us.